I would choose this risk any day over the risk of losing myself completely to something that's not meant for me. About 6 months ago, I quit my 9-to-5 job and I am now free, living as a fully self-employed creative person. I feel like everyone on the internet makes that sound easier than it actually is, but it was not a short and easy process to get to where I am today. So in this video, I'm gonna share all the things that no one talks about when they talk about leaving behind that 9-to-5 life. Probably most importantly for you all, the nitty-gritty of how I actually got to where I am today, and some of those unexpected truths about what life actually feels like on the other side. If you're new here, my name is Dana. I'm 30. I live in Salem, Massachusetts. I am a writer, a book editor, a dancer, a choreographer, a director, a content creator, essentially a multi-passionate creative person who is now making an income from freelancing and from all of those things. My primary stream of income now is my book editing business, but I think a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today really can apply to any kind of side hustle, freelancing, service-based business, creative entrepreneurship, all of that sort of thing. In the last couple years of having my 9-to-5, I was honestly pretty miserable. I didn't want to admit it to myself because objectively everything about my life looked really great. I was in a creative career. I was a fundraiser at an art and design college. I worked with incredible people in a creative atmosphere, like so much better than a lot of the people in the corporate world may have in their situations. I was advancing in my career. I was getting promotions and pay increases year over year because I was overachieving and excelling like I have always done. And the career path I was on had a lot of potential and a lot of job security. There was a lot of upward mobility that I could have gone from there at my workplace and switching to other jobs as well. But I was still suffocating. I always knew that I wanted to work for myself and that I would eventually, but I don't think I realized just how much the life of working in an office and having a 9-to-5 was really holding me back. I was wasting so much of my life commuting on trains, and even on the days that I was working from home, I genuinely felt like I was wasting so much time in meetings upon meetings upon meetings, or just working with incompetent people and not being able to push projects forward, or dwelling on the same things for years with nobody taking true action, or being the overachiever who suddenly I take action and get things done, and then I get all of this other work assigned to me, even though I'm getting paid less than the people who are doing nothing. Commuting is so much more tiring than we realize. It's harder to eat healthy when you can't prepare your own food at home. A lot of office environments are extremely unproductive. Like, you actually don't need the 40-hour work week to accomplish what people accomplish in an office in a 40-hour work week. People are constantly yapping at each other, complaining, taking up each other's time, and then complaining about how they don't have time to accomplish their work. It's also unproductive simply because of the fact that you can't follow the ebb and flow of your own energy. So you're pushing through, and a lot of time just staring at a screen trying to answer back some emails to make sure you have a pulse and don't get in trouble, when in reality you should be resting and actually aren't really accomplishing that much on that day. I often felt like a big fish in a small pond, where I had all of these really good ideas and kind of transformed the place that I was working and the processes and the creative so much during the time that I was there. I won all sorts of awards and just really had started to feel like, why am I giving all of my brain power and all of my creativity to this place and to this mission that is a beautiful mission and that I'm proud of, but that is not my own? That is not something that I'm building for myself. This is all to say that this journey, this process, this transformation into being self-employed, it was inevitable. Let's be so for real. But so much happened before I got to that point. This is not a quit your job and follow your dreams kind of story. I am not that girl who says, I quit my 9-to-5 with no backup plan. Let's see how it goes. That was not my story at all, and that is not what I recommend that you do either. I don't think that that's especially smart unless you have a significant amount of savings built up, or you have a support network that is supporting you financially and allows you to be able to do that. I think also the younger you are, maybe the more doable that is, because you have time to kind of figure yourself out. But for a lot of people, that is not an option. You can't just quit your job with no backup plan. There are a lot of people who don't have the finances saved up. There are a lot of people who don't have support systems. There are a lot of people who are supporting others, like mothers who need to support their children and can't just up and leave a job just because they don't like it. So that is why we're getting practical today about all of the things that I actually did leading up to that point. My journey from like the day I started freelance work to the day that I quit my job was more than 5 years. This is not to say that yours has to be that long. I think if you really do your research, if you listen to some of the things that I'm going to share, if you really put your foot on the pedal and accelerate it, you can do it in a lot less time, but still probably like a few years it would take to get to this point. But for me personally, it was about 5 years before I was able to quit my 9 to 5 completely. So with that being said, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Basically, in undergrad, I was an English major. I'm from an immigrant family. I'm Syrian American. My father is a Syrian immigrant. So being an English major was against everything that anyone had told me that I should be doing. It doesn't guarantee stable, high-paying jobs. There's not a very particular career pathway. It doesn't really spell stability. My dad was definitely one of those people who was like doctor, lawyer, engineer, or we got to figure out something else that's, a similar level of security for you to build your life. So I actually went into undergrad as an international business major, and while I did really enjoy that, I love other languages, I am very business-minded, it wasn't right for me. And kind of without having a plan, I just decided to switch my major to English. My focus was on creative writing, but the curriculum was pretty equally split between literature and creative writing. There's kind of two real options for careers that really are sort of advertised to you. My cat's automatic feeder just went off, so please excuse if you can hear crunching in the background. The first option is go into academia. Essentially, keep studying, become a professor, do the adjunct thing for several years before you can find a tenure track position, move all around the country to wherever you can get a job that will take you. It's kind of low paying, but hey, you get time to work on your own art, you get to be in that kind of university education environment. The second option is working in literary publishing. So working for a literary journal, a publishing house, a press, etc. in a variety of roles. From most people want to go into editorial, of course, but there's also marketing, advertising, production, etc., etc., etc. I tried both of those things. Basically worked for literary journals in undergrad and grad school. I got my MFA in poetry in Boston after I did my undergrad in Chicago. And when I was a grad student, I did start teaching undergrads and was a professor for 2-3 years. On the editorial side, I was the senior editorial assistant at a very well-known literary journal and kind of dabbled around in other positions in the literary publishing industry. At a certain point, I realized I was bored. Being a professor wasn't for me. Literary publishing was really low paying and you had to live in New York City essentially if you really wanted to have a career. This is very reductive, but this video is not about literary publishing, so I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially I realized it wasn't for me. So I started to explore other career paths and kind of try to find things that had, higher salaries, better job security, all of this sort of thing. And I realized that working in arts administration and specifically fundraising for the arts was going to be kind of the thing for me that allowed me to stay in the creative world, but also kind of use that business side of my brain and have a good career path with high paying positions available to me. So that's what I did. Basically, I shifted my career focus into that and ultimately ended up being able to get the job that I had. I started that job, switched over from the publishing industry to fundraising for the arts in 2020. I was full-time in the office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 for about 2.5 months until the COVID pandemic hit. And like so many people, that became a true era of transformation for my life. I had a lot of extra time because I was working from home. I also was getting married soon and wanted more money to throw at my wedding and to pay off my student debt. Even though I went to grad school on a full tuition fellowship, I didn't pay a cent to get my MFA, but literally just living in Boston and only being able to work about like 30 hours a week while doing grad school. So like I was working almost full time, but still had to take out significant loans just for my living costs because Boston is insanely expensive. And I feel like that cost of living element has actually been a big factor in kind of my story because the financial stress of living in such an expensive city was something that really pushed me towards this like capitalistic drive to just keep making money. In any case, that drove me to explore freelancing, explore side hustles. I was seeing a lot of videos also on TikTok about, freeing yourself from the 9 to 5, side hustling, making all this money from these different things. And I was like, I have skills to offer. I can put myself out there and just see what happens. I dedicated, I think, like a day or two during that time to setting up profiles on freelancing marketplaces like Fiverr and Upwork. Those were the two I think that I initially signed up for. I took all the advice that I could find on the internet about making those profiles effective. And I also searched up other people who were working in similar services that I had to offer, the most successful ones, and pulling examples from their profile about like how to set it up correctly. These are the parts where I think people need to be more resourceful because I get questions about that kind of stuff all the time when it's like, girl, Google it. Like, look up, how do I make my Fiverr profile good? And you will find podcasts, you'll find YouTube videos, you'll find infinite resources. And also, like, on the other side, literally go on Fiverr and look up people who are doing the same kind of services that you want to offer. Not word for word, obviously you need to customize it to yourself, but copy how they set up their profile. Being resourceful is one of the things that is going to put you miles ahead of other people, because the amount of times that people ask me things, especially on TikTok, but just like in general, that you could find by yourself so easily and just follow it is a lot. People want excuses for why they can't do these things. There's no excuses. The information is like so readily available out there. Anyways, I kind of just put myself out there. At the time, I wasn't niched down to anything really. I was putting out anything and everything. And I think that's one of the big things I want to emphasize is experimenting to find what you want to do. Unless there's a surefire thing that you're so certain about that you want to offer or make into your business or something like that, of course follow it if you have that sense. But for me, I really didn't yet. I put up services for kind of all different kinds of editing, writing, even fundraising support, because I was doing that as my 9-to-5, grant writing, poetry ghostwriting, like writing poems for people's funerals or weddings. Like, I just put out kind of anything that I felt that I could offer. And I took any job that I could get. I applied for everything. I put a lot of energy into these freelancing marketplaces. This is one of those other things, like, people just want it to be magic and suddenly they have a business. That's not how it works. At first, you really have to put a lot of energy into it to build up reviews, testimonials. To a profile with no reviews on it, having done no jobs on the website, you're not gonna suddenly get a bunch of business. You need to apply for everything. You need to take anything that you can get at first, just to build up that social proof that you know what you're doing and can offer high quality services. I was taking on things that weren't like perfectly aligned with what I wanted to be offering, but I knew that if I did a really good job with those things, those people would give me 5-star reviews, and my profile would keep going up in the rankings until I could kind of curate that a little bit more. I don't know that I knew that at the time, but I did know that being the best at anything that I was doing would pay off in the end. So at first, get in the trenches. You have to be a little bit humble and take on whatever. You will, I promise you, get to the point, and pretty soon, where you can charge what you're worth and take on projects that you want to take on, but you gotta hustle a little bit first. And that's one of those things that not a ton of people want to accept. So if you're willing to be in the trenches, so to speak, and work for slightly lower rates or take on projects that aren't perfectly aligned with you and experiment with different services and see what's hitting and what's not, that is what's going to get you started. The next thing people often ask about is how I actually balance that with having a 9-to-5. So first of all, of course, I had the advantage of working remotely for my 9-to-5, which gave me a lot of time back in my day. If you can get a remote job, if you can negotiate remote work into your contract at your current job, even a couple of days a week, I promise you it is going to help you so much if you have other things in your life that you're trying to pursue. Whether it's a side hustle or an art practice or literally anything else, remote work is a huge lever that you can pull. So if you have any flexibility, any capacity to find something that is remote or hybrid, do it. The biggest thing alongside that is that you need to be really disciplined while you're building this up. During the period of my life where I had a 9-to-5 and was building up my freelancing business, I worked a lot. I think a lot of people kind of beat around the bush with that and like don't say it outright. I was working my 40 hours a week at my 9-to-5 job and then basically staying at my desk every evening for an extra hour or 2 hours, and then taking longer chunks of work on at least one of the weekend days to go towards my freelancing business. So it's not like I was working constantly. I still set really good boundaries. I still was, relaxing every evening, hanging out with my husband, watching TV, going to sleep at reasonable time. I wasn't like sacrificing my health in severe ways, but I was working more than the average person. I would say I dedicated about 10 to 12 hours a week to my freelancing alongside the 40 hours a week of my 9-to-5 job. And I probably could have done more as well if I didn't have other things I was pursuing, like my dance career and my writing career. But I gave it essentially everything that I had to offer. Staying at my desk until 7 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. and just tacking on an hour or two of freelance work after my regular job is, I think, the essential component of what moved my business forward. So in those first couple of years, there was kind of a refinement where I started to remove services that I didn't really want to offer and brand myself more clearly as a writer and book editor. This was happening also as my business was kind of picking up and I was getting more routine work as the reviews and testimonials built up on my profiles. There was definitely a point where I had the realization of like, okay, this is real. Like, this is something I can pursue. This is something that could become full-time work for me. And that was the point where I started making strategic investments in building up my business. A big tip I want to give you guys is to not put all your eggs in one basket. For example, at that point, I was only on freelancing marketplaces. So, you know, if Fiverr shut down tomorrow, I wouldn't have had any business. This was the point that I said, I need my own website. I need to be offering my services off of these platforms. At this point, you know, I had 2 incomes and it became a worthwhile investment for me to put in $5,000 into a professionally built website for my business and a few $100s into a personal brand photo shoot for images that I could use on my website and socials. So I started to build on my own land. You do not need to do that at first. People think that they have to have everything set up already before they ever offer a service. And I want to say that that is not true. I didn't even start to think about that until I already had kind of the proof that this was something worth doing. Starting a service-based business should cost you like $0 at the beginning, as long as you have Wi-Fi, a laptop, and some knowledge or skill that you can offer. So the only startup costs are going to be if you need to buy an internet subscription, buy a device, buy or borrow a device that you can work on, or if you have no skills to offer, which I highly doubt is the case for most people. But if you need to refine a skill or learn a skill or whatever, maybe you invest in some kind of education, some kind of crash course to make yourself feel more confident in whatever service you're going to offer. But for most people, I would say there are 0 additional startup costs. You don't need to invest right away, but do along the way, as you refine and figure out what you're doing, make strategic investments in yourself and your business that will forward it in the long run. At that point, my next piece of advice here is don't be afraid to put yourself out there. This was the point at which, you know, I had my own website. I started making videos on TikTok about book editing. I started telling people in my life that I was doing this thing. I started to talk about being a book editor. I started getting clients from TikTok. I started getting clients from word of mouth of friends being like, hey, my friend is a book editor. You should work with her. And this was a huge moment in my career where I was starting to get clients on my own. I was building up my business to where I had several client funnels, different ways that I was getting clients from my freelancing business, and that diversification made me feel a lot more comfortable that it was sustainable in the long term. Because, for example, if, like I said earlier, if Fiverr shut down tomorrow, I now have this whole other side of my business where I'm also getting clients. And that was a big thing that started to help me feel secure that it could be a true full job for me. The big thing here, though, is that I really needed to have patience. It was really important for me to have my 9-to-5 during that time where I was getting subsidized health insurance, free money in a retirement account that's going to help set me up for success in my future, you know, having that salary where I could put away some money for savings. If your job is like super toxic and really affecting you negatively, yes, of course, leave it behind, try to find something else. But if you're in a situation where your job is serving you in these ways and it's something that is enjoyable, that you're learning, that you can tolerate, keep it, like be patient until you know it's the time to go. I will say though, if you're like me, I waited too long. I would say I could have quit about a year, maybe 2 years sooner than I did, but I feel like I had a lot of fear and anxiety around money. Again, like living in Boston, it's very expensive. So even though I was making more than I ever had, I was like more fearful about money than I ever had been. And I think one of the things that people don't talk about aside from that fear was kind of like grieving another potential version of my life. Like you see the crossroads diverging in front of you. I could have this like really good on paper career and high salaries and keep climbing this ladder, and I'd probably be decently happy with it and would be very successful, and like I could really do things in this career. But then there's this other path that feels like the truly aligned path, where I'm working for myself and focusing on my art and doing the things that I've always known that I was meant to do. But it's less traditional and maybe not something that people understand on paper right away. And it involves a lot more risk and betting on yourself. It's actually harder a lot of the times to bet on yourself than to rely on a company or an organization to send you your paycheck every 2 weeks. So there was a sense that in choosing this other path, I was kind of grieving over this other version of myself that existed for those 5 years and that I could see as, you know, a future existence, and honestly an easier existence than the path that I was choosing. I think mentally it took a long time for me to get to the point where I was ready to quit. And I also feel like in that process, having supportive people in my life that kind of got me out of my thought spirals and fear and anxiety was so helpful. And like for me, really, it was just one person. It was my husband, who constantly reminded me things like, if anyone can do it, it's you. You know, you're the most hardworking, disciplined person I know. You can do this over anyone else. That helped me so much, because if I was just by myself and didn't talk to anyone about it, hello. That was wild. I was telling you all about how my husband supports me so beautifully, and then he called me from work. It's like we manifested him. I feel like that is it for kind of the nitty-gritty section of like things that I feel really made the difference in carrying this forward into something that I could do full time. Just to recap, you need to put a lot of energy and hustle in at first, and you need to be willing to be kind of in the trenches, taking on whatever work you can get at first to build up social proof. Second, you need to test and change as you go. Iterate and eventually niche down when you figure out what is working best for you. Next is time blocking and discipline. You need to force yourself to work on the business. Small amounts add up over time. So just that extra hour a day, potentially, that you're working on your freelancing will build up and make a huge difference in the end. You need to find that discipline within yourself to dedicate that extra time to working. Next is to not put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure you're diversifying where you're getting your clients from, or, you know, if you're not in a client-based business, like diversifying your streams of income so that you have more than one thing as a security for you when you choose to quit your 9-to-5. Next one in our recap is not being afraid to put yourself out there. Tell people what you're doing. Post on social media if you're comfortable with it. It will yield results, because now people will think of you when they hear of related opportunities, and social media can become a client funnel. Next one in our recap is making strategic investments in yourself and your business that will help make it more sustainable and more successful in the long term. The next one is patience, not jumping too soon, and making sure you have the adequate finances and support system built up before you leave the 9-to-5 or however else you're making money right now. And the last point that I made was leaning on the people in your life who support you, because without those people to talk me through it, I feel like I may have, you know, had too much fear and anxiety to push forward into this. I hope this video isn't getting too long for you guys. There's just so much to share. I feel like even in a long video, I'm not going to be covering like every single thing, but I'm trying to hit the most important points of kind of my story and the things that really pushed it forward. Like, I literally have my notebook here with my notes in it so that I don't miss anything, to make sure I'm telling you guys everything that I possibly can. Like, if this information can help one person change their life a little bit, I'm glad that I put it out there. But the last part is kind of just talking about like life on the other side. Like, I've been away from the 9-to-5 life for 6 months, and I feel like my brain chemistry has really shifted a lot. Some of the big things are that, first of all, I realized that nothing in life is as big of a deal as I was making it. Quitting my 9-to-5 job felt like a world-ending decision to me, and then I did it and it happened and it wasn't that big of a deal, and I'm still here and we're fine. That sounds so like silly and simple, but to me it really shifted things in a way that I'm like, oh yeah, we can change our lives. Like, you can change things and it's okay. You can move to a new place, you can get a new job, you can quit your job, and you as yourself are still gonna be there on the other side. The next thing is that I genuinely didn't realize how burnt out I was from those 5 years of doing way too many things, everything growing at once, and also kind of staying too long in something that wasn't aligned for me. At the same time as some of that came from how hard I was working to build my freelancing on the side, part of it also was from the fact that I was doing something that wasn't meant for me. So it wasn't being burnt out from too much work, it was being burnt out from spending my energy in the wrong kind of work and kind of getting further and further away from you know, my soul and who I am as a person, which is an artist. Something I don't know that I've said clearly in this video is that the reason freelancing and book editing is what I needed to do is that, first of all, the lifestyle around it of being able to work flexibly on your own schedule, wherever you want to, etc., facilitates me being able to do my creative and art practices better. Also, because it's kind of in the same industry as my art as a writer, as a poet, book editing doesn't feel like as big of like a context switch and code switch as it does to go into an office and kind of be this other person and switch into a completely different industry. It's a much more seamless mindset for me to go from a writing session into editing a book for a client. So this is all to say that those are the reasons. Finding a life that was more aligned for me to be able to pursue my art was kind of the number one reason that this mattered. When I came out on the other side, I kind of expected to like have this spark and all this energy and kind of go at it 100 miles an hour immediately. And my body physically said, nah, girl, you can't do that. I was suddenly moving at a much slower pace. I've been making beautiful progress in my business and have been able to actualize so many things that I've wanted to do for years now that I don't have my 9-to-5 anymore. Like starting a Substack, like putting more videos on YouTube. Like, hello, I've wanted to do this for ages. Like going to writing residencies without having to take all of my vacation time to do so. Like, you know, potentially thinking about moving somewhere else where I don't have to be grounded in a specific place for a job. All of these beautiful possibilities have opened up to me because of that. But at the same time, I have been a little bit shocked at like how much slower of a pace I actually need. And I think part of it is burnout, and I'll probably start moving a little quicker eventually. But I think part of it is also just that the natural pace of living is not meant to be what most of us are doing. Most of us are moving way too fast. I feel like I am still really unraveling myself from these like addictions to stress, the dopamine hits of getting notifications and emails and responding to things super quickly and kind of just like running on this stress cycle and feeling like so productive when you tick off these tasks that don't actually like move anything forward. I'm working towards reprogramming my nervous system, and I feel like a lot more damage was done than I realized. Also, mindset wise, that fear and anxiety don't automatically go away once you've made the big leap. It's like a constant thing that you're dealing with, because now you fall back on no one but yourself. I think it takes a really strong mindset to not have fear and anxiety around that, to not also overwork, because when you're relying on yourself for an income, it's like every moment that you're not working is a moment that you're not making money when you're used to getting these like consistent paychecks every 2 weeks. It's worth asking yourself if this lifestyle is what you want, because they both come with trade-offs. For some people, having that steady 9-to-5 and not having to think about where their paycheck is coming from is actually more freeing than relying on yourself. For me, that was never going to be the case. And I know for so many of you, that is the reality as well, that you're never going to feel free getting your paychecks from some big corporation or organization. I would choose this risk any day over the risk of losing myself completely to something that's not meant for me. That's the big thing. Like through any anxious days that I've had or moments where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this on my own, I still know that I feel closer to myself. I feel like I'm finding myself again, and I'm writing more and I'm reading more and I'm getting back to the things that make me me. Oh, I'm getting emotional just talking about that. I feel like I spent so much time so far away from myself, and it has been a long journey, and I feel like I'm finally like breathing out and coming back to who I'm meant to be. That was a lot of talking, and like I said, I feel like I probably still didn't share every possible thing that I could have shared, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with, yapping your ears off for hours, because this literally could be hours. I'm pretty sure I already have like at least an hour or so of footage that I'm gonna need to go through and cut down. But let me know like what parts of this you're most interested in, what questions you have, anything you want me to expand upon. I can definitely keep making more of these kind of like sit down videos about the self-employed, freelancing, creative life. It's something I'm certainly passionate about. I'm sure you could tell throughout this video. So please feel free to put all of your questions down in the comments. Subscribe to my channel, like this video if you want more like this. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one.